Okay, welcome to a live stream tonight. This is probably one of the last evening live streams I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be moving back into the daytime slot later this week and next week. I prefer the daytime slot, but sometimes this is the only slot I can get. And so here we are. Um, what we're going to be talking about are the AirPods Max. Probably could tell that from the title. And I just came into possession of a set of these. And I got to tell you, I got some mixed feelings about them. In fact, right this moment, I'm wearing them, but they've got the noise cancellation feature turned on, and it feels like I'm in an anechoic chamber a little bit. I can hear my voice, but just barely hear my own voice. And I think that they're just pretty amazing in that front. I'm excited to see how they work on an airplane. I've used some of the AirPods Pro before traveling, and they're horrendous on airplanes. They don't work that great at all. You hear so much noise and rumbling, and it tries to reduce, but they just stink pretty badly. And so I've used them now a little bit with Logic, and I'm ready to give some feedback on these. If you're considering getting a pair of these AirPods Max, what you should be thinking about. So first, we'll start with the setup of them. The setup was super easy. I had hooked them up to my phone first, and because my computer and phone, they're all tied together now through your iCloud account. I didn't have to do anything in terms of Logic. I just chose Sam's AirPods Max from the output device. You can do them as an input device as well, but why would you? I do like in Logic that we can set a separate input and output device. In fact, I'm going to real quickly turn on transparency mode so I can actually hear my own voice. There's some buttons up on the top that you do different things with. And one of them is allow pass through of sounds from the outside, like my own voice. It's kind of weird talking with the noise reduction fully on. So setup super easy, and right off the bat could be monitoring in Logic, which is super handy if you want to have a nice pair of headphones to mix with. Then these are certainly a really good choice for those. Normally, I use these. These are the Shure SRH 1840s, similarly priced. So they're about the same price, around the $500 mark. These are open back headphones, the Shure ones, and the AirPods Max are not. They're closed. I mean, obviously, for noise reduction things, that makes the most sense. The initial response between these two is that the 1840s are pretty much like way better overall in terms of listenability for a long time, in terms of comfort, in terms of overall sonic quality. But they're not trying to do the same thing. So I'm not suggesting the other headphones are the ones you want. There could be some really, really good reasons for these. And one of those reasons is something we'll talk about right now, because it's the reason I have them, which is the spatial audio reason. And so these work with spatial audio in Logic. And so you can do head tracking, which means you turn your head. It is measuring the movement, and it keeps the image stationary while you move, so it sounds like you're actually in a full Atmos mix environment. And by all accounts, I had tried this with the AirPods Pro, the earbuds version, and it worked, but I've never had super great traction or fit, I guess, with those in my ears. And as you move around, it's like they're always coming just slightly loose, or they're not keeping the same sonic quality. And so I was never really happy with those, and I wanted to really have these where I could put them over my ears, have the tight fit, and be able to move around. And for that, they work great. Now, a couple things to be aware of. Um, Learning the hard way a little bit. Logic cannot be run in Rosetta mode if you want to do the head tracking with spatial audio. If you want to do the head tracking with spatial audio, it cannot be run in Rosetta. And so if you're forced to run in Rosetta due to some of your plugs, then you shouldn't expect to be able to do this. And one of those for me would be like the Reason Rack, which still requires Rosetta last I checked. And so I'd have to run in Rosetta for that with Logic, and then I couldn't do the head tracking with the spatial audio mix. That's just something you're going to be dealing with. Okay, a few other things. One of the things that drives me the most crazy about these headphones with Logic is that when you take them off, it's like it says, "Oh, we're going to deactivate the connection." And so Logic is like, "Ooh, we just lost your audio interface," and then you have to reset it. So pretty much, if you're going to be mixing in this, you're going to want to just like keep the headphones on for a long period of time, only take them off, at intervals. And at this point, it's like I'm taking them off. I'm almost just tempted to just close the project and then take them off, so that Logic doesn't like blip out and freak out a little bit every time I take them off, which is what it does. It does tend to just lose everything when you take them off. So that's a huge pain. I'm sure there's a way. I'm hoping there's a way around that, but with a just a basic approach to this without doing a ton of digging into that one element, it doesn't seem to be that there is. In fact, I take them off for a second, put them back on, and I'm listening to music from my phone. It's always connected to everything. Okay, cool. So what is it about the sound quality that I like or that I like the other headphones for more than these? I think it's just a lot of build up in the low frequencies. It's not as clear. It's harder to kind of tell what's happening with that. I took a project I was working on with the other set of headphones into the studio today, and I put it up on the big speakers, the small speakers, and it translated really well. Like the bass sounded exactly like I was hoping all across the range. It was really nice. And I mixed, or what I had worked on so far was on headphones, and I was expecting to have to take a bunch of notes and bring it back and make some changes, but I was like, no, I don't. It's like I need to just finish the rest of what I need to do on the song, but in terms of the sonic quality, it's like right on target, So I was really happy with how that translated. I don't think that's going to be the case with these headphones. I just don't. Maybe once I get to know them more, I'll be able to adjust. But right off the bat, I think that there's some tricky stuff with it. Other things. So there's 2 buttons on the top. One of them engages the noise reduction. The other one is a volume. It's like the crown from the phone or the watch, I guess. But you can also push it to skip tracks and things. You can push and hold it for Siri. So it's like an extension of a wearable tech at that point. I find that whenever I'm grabbing them to take them off, I'm always bumping the noise one. And so it's always engaging or disengaging accidentally. So I wish it was maybe in a slightly different place someplace, but I'm sure I'll get used to it. The other thing that's kind of interesting is that it has its separate volume control, which is independent from the Logic volume. So it's hard to know exactly where the reference point is at any given moment. Maybe there's a way that I can find to do that, but I think that I'm going to have to figure out how to know exactly where things are with the mix, because the more, if you accidentally bump this, you're going to be changing your whole reference point of volume, and it's not changing anything in the system. So it's like that's always pushing out the constant level, and then this is like another level of gain staging you have to worry about. So I'm sure there's some serious mixers in the Atmos realm are going to be using this as a reference to see how it sounds, but they're going to be mixing on speakers in an Atmos designed room first and foremost. A couple questions. J Beats and Waves. Hey. Obliviac says, worth it versus Bayer Dynamics or Sennheiser's in a similar price range. If you're doing straight ahead mixing, stereo content, then something in the similar price range that's not this is going to be most often the clear winner. Because you're not going to be paying for all of the extra bells and whistles of this. This comes with extra tech, extra features that don't involve mixing necessarily. And then we have one more big thing to talk about in a second, which we'll get to. But so I would think if you're doing any of that, then great, use one of those. But if you have Atmos on your brain, then this is something you're going to need in that workflow. Maybe not for like 90% of your job, but the last 10%. And the reason is, let me create a new project. This is an empty one. So I'll just create an empty thing here. And let's turn this project on for Spatial, for Dolby, right? Cool. And on the master in here, here's this. And this is the reason why I'm guessing a lot of studios, even if they're Pro Tools or Nuendo rooms, are still investing in a copy of Logic, is because this is one of the few ways to actually hear the Apple renderer. Not the only way, but one of the few. And so you can load the project into here and hear it through the actual Apple renderer, which is what Apple Music is using. But on top of that, you get to hear this through the Apple renderer with head tracking. Both the standard spatial audio profile and the personalized spatial audio profile, which is the new thing that Apple is doing with one of their latest iOS versions, where you can actually scan your ear and you get a profile which matches your head instead of just the default one. So these options only work if I have this pair of headphones or one of the other earbuds that have this compatibility. If you're working in universal mode, not Rosetta, and if you have this turned on. One of the really cool benefits of all of this, turns out, if you're working in surround sound but not spatial audio, you can actually, let's turn off spatial audio for a second. Turn it off. So say we don't even have that on there. So now we just have a surround sound thing. This has the vertical speakers, so it's, relatively complex surround sound system to have all the speakers for. But we could come through here now and do spatial audio monitoring for 7.1.2. And this gives us all of these as well. So the standard audio profile, the personal, the head tracked one as well. So I can do head tracking on a surround mix, and as I move my head around, I can hear the center speaker, the left and right, the rears, even the vertical. This is not Atmos per se. This is a way to monitor just surround sound. So we could come through, and this still happens. People are still mixing in 5.1 less often, but it happens. So I just put my project in 5.1. Let's reload it so now it's 5.1, and I've got head tracking, so I can monitor a 5.1 mix with these pair of headphones and get the sense of the actual surround channels. Obliviac says, I have regular AirPods Pro. I take it these Atmos features are just with the AirPods Max. No. In fact, I got the AirPods Pro, because it does work with this as well. As long as it's one of the versions that works with it. So I don't know. I think all of them, but I don't know for sure exactly. But if they're relatively newer, you should pull them out and try it out because it should work. Now, don't forget to turn off Rosetta, because it won't work with Rosetta for the head tracking part of it. Now, I don't actually use, when I'm doing surround mixing, I'm doing something else completely. If you've watched my channel for any length of time, you probably know, but I use a Waves NX system, and Abbey Road is one of my favorites for 5.1. And so you have the whole 5.1 experience here. And I use the head tracker, which is this little device on the top of my headphones. And so it's like a little Bluetooth thing, and it monitors my movement pretty well. I've done a lot of mixes on those now in various rooms. I have all of the NX rooms, I think, right now. I don't know if there's any that I don't have. The Germano room does 5.1. Not all of them do 5.1. That's why they're not all going to show up here. NX does it, just the traditional one. But all the rest, I think, are just for stereo rooms. So cool, right? So I use that system, and I trust that system. I think it's pretty good, but this is nice to have another option. Cool, Obliviax. I'm glad. Definitely check it out. It's really kind of fun to experiment with, and then the reality sets in that Atmos is what it is. It's a format that some people use accidentally, who just happen to have the right tools, and there's some people who use it on purpose and then get bored with it, or it's distracting, and why. I prefer this technology for films, like if I'm watching a film on my phone, iPad, or Apple TV. So if I'm on my Apple TV, right, and say my wife is on a Zoom call in the other room, I don't want to be having the TV blasting. I just put these on now, and I get the full immersive audio experience. If I move my head just a little bit, it sounds like explosions are happening behind me, or ship flies over my head. Or the music is just enveloping me while simple drama takes place in front. These are a great tool for that. I think that's the revolutionary part, is the part where I can just like throw on the headphones in the room and have the whole experience without having to distract anybody. And it's more immersive. I don't even have to have surround sound speaker set up anywhere. I can just do it all in one place with one small device, and I get the entire experience. On the other hand, it's very isolating, meaning, and the noise reduction on these are so good. They're so good that the other day I was watching something, just testing them out, and one of my kids came up and was like standing like 1 foot from me in my personal space. I didn't even notice they were there, and I couldn't hear what they were saying. They're that good with the noise reduction. It blocks out the sound of children, which sounds like a little slice of heaven, doesn't it? The last thing, this will be where we end it because we're not going to go that long tonight, is the biggest downside of these for anybody who's doing any sort of content creation with MIDI keyboards or microphones. These are like a Bluetooth headphone. They're not super low latency. And so I push a key on a keyboard, and it takes a second to play. You can't hear it at all because I don't have the audio going through. But I can hear it, and I could never perform that way. I couldn't record that way. So these are great for the mix down process, but not the recording process. And so you don't ever want to think that these can be your only tool for all phases of the production process, which makes them pretty niche. And if you need them for that Atmos process, then they're amazing. If you want to be able to listen to amazing sounding music on an airplane or while traveling or whatever, they're great for that. Um, if you need like an everyday set of headphones for recording and mixing and everything, then these are not the solution. Hey, JD. Hi, New here. Any questions? I mean, I know that we just got a few more people in the room. We're keeping this short tonight, but anybody have any questions of the 6 or so of you who are sitting here? This is a good time to ask before I, I go on to other things. Let's see what see what's on my phone if you're asking questions. This is like I'm a student in class on Facebook while the teacher's talking. Um, but I don't see any questions pouring in. So we will, like I said earlier at the very beginning, we're going to be moving live streams away from the evening. I've been doing them now just out of practicality for reals, but it's going to be time to like get back to the daytime crowd instead of the nighttime crowd. Obliviac says, thanks, man. Great info. Definitely niche. I didn't really get the point of them and the price point until now. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, there is a point to them. They're not for everybody. If you have the money lying around and you want just a really nice pair of fun headphones, then cool. But they're not going to be my go-to for working. They're going to be my go-to for doing spatial audio things. And I'll continue to use the Waves NX as well too. Man, we had a few more people jump in. It's like I need to just goof around for the first 20 minutes of every live stream, and then let people show up, because I think that's how it kind of trickles out a little bit when I never give warning for a stream. And I rarely do. I decide about 5 minutes before. Tonight was 4 minutes before I started streaming. I had decided a little bit before that, but I had to make a thumbnail and had to actually like post it up. And by the time I posted it, I gave it 4 minutes until I started. JD says, thinking about buying Logic Pro, was an old user back in Logic 5 Magics. Yeah, Magic. Those are the old days, are the good ones, but if you can figure out a system currently in a way that runs smoothly and you sort out all the bugs that may or may not affect your workflow, it's never been a better time to be a Logic user. I get contacted probably every other day by somebody who's having a hard time running their system, and there's something that's throwing a wrench into it. But that's a really small percentage of people. I think the vast majority of people are running this stuff just fine, and it's working great. I had Logic crash on me tonight for the first time in months, it feels like, and that was because I was doing this. I think I have a couple incompatible plugins for universal mode, and I have to run a Rosetta for most of the time. But I had, in order to do a demo with Atmos and head tracking with their hardware, I have to take it out of Rosetta mode. So that's the bummer. Just bought the Mac Studio. Awesome, Mac Studio. Yeah, that's what I'm running right now. I've got the Mac Studio Ultra, and not totally decked out. I mean, you could always deck out things more. But I've got the 64 gigs of RAM, 2 terabyte hard drive. With not much storage. I need to clean up my storage a little bit. that's like, I mean, for the most part, that's all you can really customize anyway. Yes, Oblivix, I agree with that. I don't know about, I don't think it's actually intuitive. I am not someone who thinks that Logic is easy to use. I've taught too many students to believe that for any second. But it's learnable. And once you learn it, it feels intuitive. But that's the same with every software. I was working on Pro Tools earlier today. I've worked on Pro Tools for years, but it's been a minute since I've done like a session in there. And, I had a session pulled up and was setting up something. And I was like, ooh, this feels like an old friend saying hi, but that's okay. Let's see. JD got the M1 Max with 1 terabyte. Cool. Bolivia says, this is my first live of yours. Glad I hopped on. I will definitely try to catch your future streams. Thanks. Yeah, I've been doing more live streams than non-live streams of late for a lot of reasons. One is I like interacting with people. Two is this way I don't have to edit anything. If it sucked, it sucks. If it's great, it's great. But I really like the interactive part. Daryl says, do you use 2 computers to stream? No, I just use one. Um, and I use 2 monitors. I mean, that's not the same thing as 2 computers, but I use 1 computer and it seems to work really well. I mean, I'm not right now in a fancy lighting setup, so there's probably a little green tint on me, a little bit, but I have some lights in front of me and like a green screen behind me, and use OBS, which handles that kind of setup really smoothly. Audio stuff can get a little tricky streaming, so I can't really record while streaming, but I can do everything else. JD says, when I was using it back in the day, I would only sequence in Logic and stem out to Pro Tools. I mix in Logic, yeah. I think Logic, excuse me, mixing in Logic is as good as any other application at this point. Everyone has their personal preference on that, and you got to work with your personal preference because that's the only way to really function is the way that makes sense to you. But I personally believe you can do anything in Logic that you can do in any other workstation if you want to. Oblivious says, I guess it's my GarageBand background. I abuse the hell out of the step sequencer and drum synth to quickly get going with production. With a good template for my vocals, I can get going. Yeah, I agree. I'm kind of the same. I love the step sequencer quite a bit. I was so pumped when they came out with it. And now the workflow with the Logic Control app, um, it makes me feel nostalgic for the old days of drum machines. And that's the first time I've ever felt that way with a piece of software. What I mean is, if I'm running Logic here, and let's just pull open real quick. I'll do a little something on the screen behind me here. We'll do, yeah, let's do a DMD, I guess. And something. And then we will turn on step sequencer, right? And I don't know. Let me look to see if I've got it on here. Oh yeah, I just need to read. My phone is capacity because I've traveled a lot this year and I just haven't downloaded the photos yet. So now every time I do something, my phone's like, oh, you've reached capacity. We're going to automatically unload the apps you haven't used in a while, which I said it could do, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't like cause me some angst sometimes. Okay, so I've got the app on. Cool. And it's really easier with when we get into things like the iPad. But I'll show this to you. On my phone, I've got the step sequencer all right there. And anytime I do something on here, it's going to put it up on my actual Logic screen, right? So I love being able to sit here with my phone in hand and just like program away. I don't like using my mouse if I don't have to with this. That makes me feel like I've got a drum machine right in here. That's what I like. So just having that tactile-ish experience without having to use the mouse. I love that. JD's asking what my interface is. Right now I've got a Scarlett 18i20 on the wall. I don't know. I could probably do this. Let me see. Where's my camera controller? Okay, so I'll put this on the screen. You can see me for a second. Let's go the other way. So there's my wall. IKEA hacks for the win, right? This is just my small YouTube room. I have a bigger room where I do more stuff, and I have a full like 13-foot green screen that I use sometimes, and other camera things, and bigger keyboards and all that stuff. But this is like the little closet room that's quiet all the time. And so you can see I've got some of my Behringer stuff on there. Backup, Steinberg interface. There's the Scarlett 18i20. It's old school, but it still works. Class compliant, which means I don't have to have drivers. Extra cables, screwdriver, other little things. And then below, you can't see this, but I've got a big keyboard right in front of me, and a synthesizer, an SX240 from Kawai on the side. So I've got all the stuff I need for streaming in one room. Kind of a fun little setup that I like. Oh, I guess I need to like pull that back for the stream's sake. Okay. I need to just get that saved as a preset, but I haven't. Okay, cool. Cool. What are you asking about the Ultra? What did you get with the Ultra? Why? It's a really long story. I'm just kidding. It's not a long story. I work for a university, and every certain number of years, faculty who teach in the tech fields get a budget to replace a computer, and that was the amount of budget that I was given. So I got that one, and I use it for teaching. I use it for projects for students. I use it for all kinds of stuff. So during the pandemic, I actually bought the M1 Mac Mini, just the 8 gigs of RAM one, and that thing's a beast. That thing was a beast all by itself. And it's like I need to find a new home for that one, because I'm no longer using the Mac M1 Mac Mini. Said that wrong like 3 times, but it's still a great machine, and it's still better than a lot of people have. I think at some point I need to like do a giveaway on the channel if I can get to enough people, and like raffle it off or something. Like pay for shipping, and I'll send you the Mac Mini M1. Why not? Mostly because I'm not using it. That's the main reason. And in a closet over here, I have a Mac Studio Max. So I've got a Max, an Ultra, and an M1 Mac Mini in the house right this moment. And I'm using the Ultra. That's the main one. But I did some testing comparing the two. The Ultra and the Max were pretty much For all practical purposes, identical. JD says, you think the Mac Mini can run Logic with all the plugins? Yeah. So even the 8 gig of RAM one, as long as you keep enough room on the hard drive, which is used as an extension of the RAM, then it can run an enormous amount of things. The only place it falls down is when you do like big orchestral banks. If you're doing something orchestral, that is not the tool that you should be using. And it's like I need to maybe re-up at some point my, let's see, which one is it? The Composer Cloud from East West. But I use East West stuff all the time. And just as an example, I don't know if this is going to work since I'm not in Rosetta mode, but we'll find out for a second. So I just come into something like, the strings diamond. Let's just like replace. And then it takes like a second or two to get going. You can't hear because I haven't switched over my audio drivers, but there was no delay. Everything just played. And it's a decently big patch, just played with no issue whatsoever. That's what you get with the Ultra. You can do massive libraries at that point. Another question from Obliviex. I am from the steps. Let's see. Aside from the step sequencer, what is your favorite Logic feature? Yes, I had to read all 3 of those comments to understand what you were saying. I mean, there's a lot of things that I really like. One of the things that I've been doing of late, after I do like a pitch correction pass on things. So say I do like a vocal track, I do flex pitch. I think I've got another project open. Right, so here, that's not really, it doesn't look like I've pitch corrected that, but it's a good example. So you can definitely come through here and so we are going to do, trying to think, we'll do a few things with this. Once I get all the notes kind of in place, you'll do a create MIDI track from flex pitch data. And it's going to take all of the pitch stuff that I just had. Where did it put it? Into MIDI. So then you can like take your vocal and have like a different instrument play along with the exact pitch of the vocal that you just worked on. That's really cool. So that's one thing that I really like about this. The other thing would be a drum replacer. So if I'm recording real drums, it's just so easy to do drum duplication replacement. You do that. I don't think I have the ability. I don't have any drums in here that are audio, but it's right over in here where you replace or double drum track. You can see it's grayed out since I don't have audio selected. I wonder if I selected audio, if that would actually pop up for a second. Nope, still not recognizing it. That's okay. There it is. You have to select the track too. So then you can add like an additional snare or kick to your drum pattern that you've been working on with the acoustic drummer. Super easy to do that. Groove track is one of my favorite things. Just setting up a groove track so that all the other tracks get timed to it. It works like 75% of the time, but in those 75%, it's the right amount of magic that works out really well. I mean, there's so many like nuggets here that are things you can do in other pieces of software, but they're not things you can do as easy as in Logic. Okay, I gotta go. End of stream. Oh, have I bought any? I'm going to answer this question, I guess. JD says, have you bought any third-party apps plugins? So I do use third-party stuff for sure. Empirical Labs, the arouser, which is like a distressor. I've got the entire Eventide kit. I'm an educator, so the Eventide, most of these come because I'm an educator / YouTuber. So these are all things that have come. I've tried the GPU audio early access, which doesn't work for this. Newfangled Audio, I've got those. That's actually part of one of the other ones. The Oak Sound Soothe 2, which is one of the most amazing plugins in the world. I pay for Reason Rec. That's one of the ones I pay $20 a month to use. I've always loved Reason. I will always love Reason. It's amazing. TC Electronic Clarity M. That's something different. That's a monitor tool. And then these are all Waves plugins that I've purchased as well. So yeah, I definitely have. There are some instruments as well that I use. And these are the Roland Cloud, East West, I've paid for. ImageLine FL Studio works in here, and I paid for that. Kira Q-Tech, which is a DX7. Mimu, the jellyfish. That company sent that to me to try out, which I love. The Moog Model 15 I definitely purchased. Newfangled Audio, Reason Studios, and Roland Cloud. Roland Cloud's a new thing. I'm doing a partnership with them with our university. So we have it in all of our studios, and students can use it, and then buy a cheaper version of it. I love the Roland Cloud stuff. I mean, some of those devices I used in my early days, the hardware, as I learned how to do any of this stuff. So I love it. I do not have any UAD plugins or any UAD devices. I've thought about it a few times, but at this point, no. I haven't found a need for it yet. Okay, seriously though. Daryl says, I refuse to update Reason until it is M1 compatible. Darn them. They said that they were going to do it. They even gave us a timeline at one point, which they deleted when they realized it would work with Rosetta. And they just said, oh, everyone can use Rosetta. We'll get to it when we get to it. It's like, come on. Already. Finish this. Come on, Propellerhead. Get this thing working. Okay. Thanks, everybody, for the good questions and the conversation. And until next time, as I said, we're moving the streams to the daytime for the rest of the week and next week. Keep those notification bells triggered and make sure you're subscribed, because this is one of those like pop-up things, man. 5 minutes warning. That's all I give. And then we talk for as long as we do. But if you want to be there at the beginning when all the good stuff happens, make sure you have those notifications going. See y'all later.